Welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B Growth Guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Susie Cashin. So I'm going to read Susie's bio to make sure I get this right. Susan is a fractional chief revenue officer, recognized for leading company growth initiatives with expertise in sales team startups, growth stage companies, and those preparing for a successful exit. She works with small to mid-sized companies, typically between 3 and 65 million in revenue, across all industries, with specialty in professional services, healthcare, manufacturing, and consumer goods. She does more than just consult. She actually does the work by implementing a proven sales operating and management system to drive sustainable revenue growth. Business owners she helps are oftentimes frustrated with flat or declining revenue. They might be upset about employee turnover or nervous about their future and their ability to grow sales, and she brings solutions to those problems. So, Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this myself. So before we dive into some of the topics that we've been chatting about, why don't you give our audience a little bit of background? Like, tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Wow. Well, thank you for this opportunity. Well, I started my career right out of college, actually in sales with a very large Fortune 100 company. I call them a world-class sales organization
Mhm.
in the CPG world. And I spent about 10 years at that company. And, their mindset was you're either up or out. And so they had the most amazing training, learning, and development that they offered. And so I started in Los Angeles with the largest sales rep territory,
Oh, wow.
LA County and Palmdale, Lancaster. And I had the opportunity to get promoted like every 18 months. And so
Wow.
I went into an account management role and a DSM, district sales manager. So really, that is what kind of set the stage for my career in sales.
Mhm.
And from there, the company was sold. I helped them through the acquisition from another larger CPG company. And I was contacted by a recruiter who said, "Hey, we have a startup. You would be one of 4 leaders in the US and Canada that we'd like to establish a sales team. Would you be interested?" And initially I said, "No, I don't want to go from an A company to a C company."
Right.
I'll admit, I really needed to, have a little bit more humility. I'm like, it's really kind of an unknown brand. And the recruiter was so excellent in that conversation. She's like, look at this differently. Look at this as an opportunity to kind of create a legacy and, design a sales organization based on all of your experience. And so my experience first 10 years with that world-class sales organization, CPG company was like the best paid education you can ever have. So I translated all that experience into hiring and leading a sales organization. And I spent 14 years at that company. It was so
Wow.
rewarding. Again, lots of growth opportunity. I held sales ops, sales management, actually sales myself. I was an account executive. And then we grew that company to about $850 million over a 14-year period. During that time, I had an opportunity to lead a turnaround with the economic decline in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
People weren't spending as much money, they didn't have as much disposable income. And so, as such, we kind of had to pivot our strategy. And I had the opportunity to also lead those efforts. So, I have had a great, rewarding background, and I share all of that because that's really what brought me to where I'm at today. 8 years ago, I had a life-changing event. I had a car accident
Yeah.
that was a very humbling experience, and it forced me to do a lot of thinking about how I wanted to, what legacy I wanted to leave behind, and who I wanted to co-author the rest of my professional career with. And it wasn't in corporate America. So I started GrowthWise Consulting. And at first, I was all in consulting as an interim chief revenue officer, vice president of sales for a couple of companies. And then a couple years ago, I pivoted my strategy and decided I no longer wanted to be full time and just work with one client. And so my strategy now is working with small to mid-sized businesses and helping them to grow or lead turnaround initiatives and help them prepare for an exit. So that's what brought me to where I'm at today.
That's so interesting and such an interesting sort of path. Um, it's always interesting to me to see how, sort of people develop and how what happens tomorrow is, oftentimes a function of what happened yesterday. And I bet it probably didn't seem as linear to you at the time as it looks now,
Absolutely not.
huh?
It's funny because when you think about opportunities, or people say, what is the greatest thing about your career if you look back? And I really just say it's all the opportunities and my ability to show up and be ideal for that opportunity and then say yes.
Yeah.
And it's been a very scary journey, but it's really helped me to pave the way with the level of experience and expertise that I can now bring with a very diverse background, handling so many different business challenges, whether it be a startup and growing the company, leading a turnaround, or helping a company to prepare for an exit.
Yeah. Well, so you've had all these really diverse experiences. Not only, you've worked for the large corporate America, you've worked for startups now, and you're advising, businesses of many different sizes across a number of different industries. I'm curious if you have seen something that I've observed sometimes that oftentimes businesses hit a similar, sort of ceiling, or I call it the revenue roadblocks. And oftentimes I see like there's a block that happens at about 1 million, and some companies sort of like will bounce around that million mark for a while, and then they have a breakthrough to kind of about 5 million, and then they'll bounce around there for a while, and then they have another breakthrough to get to 10, and then there's one about 25, another about 50. Do you see that in companies that you work with?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think it's a normal growth trajectory for every company, and it's the milestones that you actually called out are also the same ones that I see.
Yeah.
Um, I have had the opportunity to work with very fresh entrepreneurs where they're just ideation stage and they're like,
Hmm.
where do I go now? So helping them to develop that strategy. And I always say, have a very strong message. So you need to include marketing, but then find your first 10 customers.
Yeah.
And then, they bring in about 1 million, to 2 million in revenue, and it's all 100% sweat equity. And then they realize this is not sustainable because their
That's right.
business is growing, and there's only so many hours in the day, right? So, and then somewhere around 5 million, I see that companies don't have the proper foundation. And when you're along that journey, if you think about sales, so many people think about sales as actually sales. It's a byproduct of all the awesome things that you do, the product or service that you offer, your ability to manufacture it, et cetera, right? Speak to your audience. However, sales is actually a department. It's the revenue
Yeah.
generating department of your business. And it's really the most critical outside of your capability to deliver the service or function and or product. And so I always say, now is the time to build the foundation. So you've built the first story on the house, but you don't have the basement. So we're going to back it up, and I'm going to come in, and I am going to do a deep dive discovery under the hood. What are the elements that are missing? What do you have that needs optimized? And by building that framework and that foundation, which I call people, process, and performance metrics, it
Yeah.
enables a duplicatable, repeatable sales process that
Right.
if you were to step away from your business, it's documented. And you could easily be able to articulate to somebody else that came in, be it a new salesperson or a sales leader, how success is defined in your business, not only defined, but how do we achieve success? And
Yeah.
so it's all about people, process, and those performance metrics. So that is, it's a proven process that I use where about 98% of the clients that we work with will see an average of 32% year-over-year growth in year one after implementing this sales operating and management system that I'm licensed through an organization called Sales Acceleration. They are the
Mhm.
global leader in sales consultancy. Um, so yeah, that's basically what I do, somewhere between, $3 and $5 million, and then that gets the company back onto a growth trajectory.
Yeah.
And, then they see, a little bit later on in their growth cycle, the need to bring in a leadership team and,
Yeah.
department heads and so forth. So I'm sure you see that a lot with the clients that you work with on the marketing side as well.
That's right. Yeah, and it's so funny to hear you talk about, taking a step back and building that foundation because, we have these sort of defined things that have to happen, for you to break through that $1 million mark or that $5 million mark or that $10 million mark. And so oftentimes companies will, come to us and they're like, we can't break through this layer. And it's almost always like, well, have you done X? And they're like, we've been working on it. And I'm like, well, that's why. Like it's you got to really solve those fundamental things in order to have those breakthroughs. So it's interesting that you see the same thing. And I love your focus on process because so oftentimes people think of like sales as an event. But
Yes.
it really is a process that starts with the marketing piece and rolls into the nurturing of it, and then as you sort of facilitate that change management, and a process also opens the door for sort of technology solutions. And there's a big, if you've been living under a rock, AI is really making a big impact in lots of different places of business. But I'm curious, how are you seeing, AI and automation and some of those technology tools impacting the sales processes that you're helping your clients to build?
Oh, immensely. In fact, this is the hottest topic that I've been speaking on a lot
Yeah,
lately and one of the greatest concerns is, is AI going to replace salespeople?
right.
And my answer is twofold. One, if you have a very price-driven, transactional type business model, and methodology, perhaps it can, and it can through by way of the work I'm sure that you do in terms of inserting chatbots on websites. So it's automating that sales process for more transactional sales. But and we're dealing with a very well-informed buyer. I mean, I think 75% of the buying decision is made even before your
Yeah,
first contact with a salesperson.
that's
And
right.
why having salespeople in a more consultative sales model is so important is to be able to differentiate you from the other people in your space, develop that relationship and that trust because we all buy from people that we know, like, and trust and
Yeah,
can depend on. And so I would say in a more consultative relationship type sales model, no, there will always be a need for salespeople. So how it has really impacted and what I'm seeing in sales is that AI is utilized as a tool.
yeah,
It's a tool for productivity and automating processes in your own back office, lead generation. And so there's so many applications where their AI plays a role. One of the areas, obviously, is just note taking. Anytime
Yeah.
you're, in the field, Otter is a really great one. It's an
Yep.
application you can have on your phone, and you can record live face-to-face conversations you're having with customers, and then automate that. It automatically sends it to your CRM, and then sends it out to your contact. And then obviously in Zoom meetings and such. So another area is where it has really helped to automate the lead generation. So doing the research, right, about customers, your target audience, known as your ICP, ideal client profile, and then creating lead lists and lead scoring, which you can talk every day, all day about this, right? Because this is
Yeah.
much more, this is top of sales funnel. This is much more your lane. But for smaller companies that might have the sales reps doing that lead gen work, that's another area where AI has really taken over. And then automating your messages. I create AI generated sales playbooks, which is a very affordable option when you're thinking about building out a sales infrastructure and tying in sales strategy and process and messaging. You pull it together in a sales playbook. It's a very affordable option for business owners because you have AI to pull it all together for you instead of
That's
having to
right.
do it on your own. So those are just some of the ways that AI has really helped to transform sales.
Yeah, I love your, sort of question, like, will AI replace salespeople? And like what I always tell people, really sort of any role, that like AI probably won't replace you, but someone that's using AI will. And so that could be you. Like you can figure out how to use it for your role, or you might lose your job because someone else will figure out how to, make it work better. And the
Mhm.
thing that I always tell people, they'll ask like, how should I be using AI? And the answer is always start by building a process. And you talked about that as, sort of fundamental in what you do with those performance metrics that you can then sort of measure, well, how well is the process working? Can we improve it? That's when you then find the data or the technology, whether it's AI or automation or any one of a number of things that makes that process work better and impacts those performance metrics. And that's a much better approach than going out and, finding a shiny object. And now you got a hammer, so you're just going to look around for nails to hit it with.
Exactly. And so, I use the analogy. So when with the advent of a calculator, it didn't replace CPAs, right?
Right. That's right.
So look at AI as a tool. And for people that are not early adopters, or, you know, lead in that, tech space, I would say just start somewhere. Start with
Yeah.
one application and let that be a note taker, right?
Yeah.
Or go to Chat GPT and set up an assistant that gets to know you and what you do, right? And as you can, research and create prompts, it will memorize that. And that
Right.
becomes such an efficiency when you're doing lead generation, say, for as a sales rep. Another area, actually, it's really cool, is there's an application where you can do sales coaching. So
That's right.
yeah, and so a sales manager can, be comfortable about going on vacation when they just hired somebody new, and companies can set up a repository of their sales playbook and anything and everything you need to know, and these applications will coach you through how to run a sales call and what to say, and verbal sparring, as I call it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great use case. I love that one. And I actually I have a client that's developing a tool that uses like the disc profiles and like the ocean personality assessment to analyze buyers and then
Okay.
provide like a psychological profile of, hey, here's how to shift your positioning for your particular solution to use their trigger language, like the things that are really gonna sort of motivate them and help them see the value of it. It's so interesting, all the stuff that's coming out and how it can be.
I actually use a tool like that. It's an AI tool. It's a plugin. It's called KnowledgeNet, and it
Uh-huh.
plugs into your LinkedIn. So it's a
Yeah,
relationship mapping tool,
yeah,
and it will tell you who your first connections, like you load in your ICP and you narrow your focus on your ideal client, your target audience, your ideal client profile. And then you say people likely with these titles in this geography, in this industry, these types of companies, right? Then it looks at your first level connections and say you and I are connected first level, and I want to get into a client or a company that you're connected with or have a contact, it'll automatically write the email me asking you to make that introduction. Yeah, it's
I'm gonna
crazy.
look into that one.
And then you can click on the person that you want to meet at that
Uh-huh.
company, you want to reach out to, and hit the crystal nose, that little
Yeah,
I
I
button,
know that
the
one. Yeah,
crystal nose gives you a whole disc profile. So
that's
it's
right.
just like what you're saying your client's creating, and that's the wave of the future.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and like I say, it's that bionic integration. You might not be replaced by AI, but somebody using it
Yeah.
will definitely replace you if you aren't taking advantage of it. Um, and I always say, like, it's the strongest ROI of a hire I ever made was that $20 a month I spend on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever.
Yep.
So let's shift gears a little bit, and because we could kind of talk about fun stuff in the AI space all day, but part of what how you and I met was through the lens of exit planning, and you talked a little bit around how you help companies sort of prepare for exit. I see so often that when companies are getting ready to sell, one of the best ways to improve their enterprise value is through implementing marketing and sales structures. But so few marketing and sales folks think about the bottom line and EBITDA because so many of them are really just focused on, sort of top line revenue.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about how you see, implementing sales process and systems impact the enterprise value, the value of the organization that makes them more attractive to buyers, de-risks the buy, and all of those things.
Yeah. So what I often see is with clients that are thinking about exiting. And sometimes it's always better when it's a planned exit, right?
Yeah,
1 to 3 years out. But sometimes, they say the 4 Ds come into play and
that's right.
it's a sudden thing, death, divorce, disease, distension with your partner.
Yeah,
And it's a more, forced circumstance. And it's unfortunate because you have all this pride in this baby that you built, and you don't realize the gaps. And there's always sales gaps, not only in building out that foundation and being able to articulate to a prospective buyer how success is created in your organization, but then you take a look at their customer concentration and you find that 80% of their revenue is tied up in two or three customers. That's
right.
not sustainable, right? Or it's a founder-led sales organization. And as soon as that individual leaves, chances are so will the customers. And so it really devalues the company. And, I always say the more valuable you are to your company, the less valuable your company is, right?
That's
It's,
right.
it's, unfortunate but true. So, um, sales really, what I see where things are fractured within organizations is the customer concentration, the founder-led sales organization, the lack of being able to define how success is created and how obviously you're selling a product or a service, but what's your sales strategy? How do you articulate that? How do you differentiate yourself? And if all of that's not documented, and I like to pull it together in that sales playbook, it's really hard to duplicate that and
Right.
hand something over that's worth, that's valuable to a prospective buyer. And all of these things come out and are very transparent and due diligence and due diligence. And so
Yeah.
a lot of companies, unfortunately, have to sell due to the 4Ds, or it's always better when there's a 1 to 3 year runway. I like to
Yeah.
work with those types of companies that aren't looking for an immediate, turn. It usually takes about 6 months, 3 months to build an infrastructure, and then 3 months to see any increase or improvement in sales as a result of building that foundation.
Yeah, it's so funny you talked about that sort of, owner dependence. And oftentimes when, we're, helping a company that's preparing for exit, we're like, who's your best salesperson? And oftentimes the owners are like, oh, me, no one can sell it like me. Everyone else is worthless. I'm like, that's not a good thing for you. But they take a lot of pride in it. And it's funny that when you sort of say, well, do you realize how risky that makes this for the next buyer? Because you don't want to be here selling for them. You don't want to be their top salesperson. And then oh, yeah, I guess we do need to document some of these things.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so interesting. Well, I'm curious, and not to put you on the spot, how much sort of improvement in, sort of the multiple that companies can earn do you see happen from making some of these improvements? Not just in, sort of being able to show that story of, upward trajectory to a potential buyer, but actually, making it more valuable. Do you have sort of handy numbers that you see? Does it vary from, business to business?
I don't have any specific numbers that I
Yeah.
can call out, but I can tell you that the pre or going through due diligence and the number on the um, front end of planning for an exit
Yeah.
is can be pennies on the dollar. And that was the case for
Um,
one of my clients that I can share a case study and or a success story with you.
yeah.
We haven't actually sold the company. That's probably at some point here in the future, but where I was inserted into the business was to prepare her for that longer term liquidity event. So it's hard to really say a difference in numbers, in terms of, okay, well, you got 10x versus 2x.
Right. Right.
Um, because every circumstance and situation is different, every industry is
That's
different.
right.
Um, but I'll just share the story with this one client. So it was a B2C, business to consumer, D2C, direct to consumer, costume jewelry company.
Okay.
And she had actually contacted a company that helps with exits, and does kind of a evaluation, a pre-evaluation.
Uh-huh.
And it was determined that if you hold the course and if you make some corrections in your business and grow your revenue back to closer where it was pre-COVID, you are going to get, a 10x multiple.
Yeah.
And so I was brought in by this business broker
Hmm.
to have a conversation with the owner and go through some ideas on what can we do to grow this. As you know, in marketing, a direct to consumer business is a heavy digital footprint, right? Trying to reach the consumer. Um, and a lot of SEO and so forth. And so I said, where I can add value to your business is creating a completely new vertical in your business, a B2B vertical, and get you into the likes of Nordstrom's and Macy's and, some national department stores, as well as hiring salespeople.
Right.
I brought in 28 salespeople across the US. First, it was the top 10 markets, and we did a lot of market analysis, and then we hired a second wave of reps. So today, the team stands at 28. They are knocking on doors. It happens to be a motivational, inspirational brand, and so they're knocking on doors of yoga studios, hospitals, if you think about gift shops at hospitals,
Yeah.
hotels, resorts, florists that have gift shops, and of course, women's clothing boutiques. So we have significantly grown the business because we created a second channel in the
Yeah.
business. And, within 6 months, I mean, the business was up like 54%.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's starting to level off. We obviously saw a huge trajectory right out of the gate within the first 6 months. But I mean, this is double-digit growth, and that's what we needed to do. We need to bring in the sales team, build the solid foundation with a playbook, and then over time, see the continued growth. And so it's been a really exciting one for me.
That's such a great story. And I mean, not only is the business now worth more because the bottom line is better, but so many more buyers want to get in on something that looks like it's going up and away than the something that
Yes.
looks like it's struggling to recover from COVID 5 years later. So what a great story. What a great story. Well, you're obviously an expert in a lot of, interesting things that we're both passionate about and we could talk about all day, but I got to be mindful of your time. But before I let you go, talk to us a little bit about, the types of companies you work with. Who should reach out? Who should connect with you?
Yeah, thanks. Well, any company where it's a founder-led sales organization or sales have stalled, and what was working yesterday is no longer working today, that's a great client. But from an emotional perspective, it's somebody that's really frustrated because all of the things that got them to where they're at today aren't working. So they're super frustrated and they don't understand why. So I would
Yeah.
start with a sales discovery and identify where those sales gaps are in their infrastructure with their team, their organization, and such. They're upset because they potentially have a lot of turnover on their sales team. There's no continuity, and that's usually driven by not doing team assessments on the incoming when you're hiring. So assessing people to see, you're assessing for skill and will, and making sure that they would be a dynamic person on your sales team. And then another thing to look at is the compensation plan, and that's really the motivator and what motivates salespeople. And so I like to design sales plans that are like 60-40, 50-50, base and commission. So companies that have those types of challenges, they don't know what they don't know until we
Yeah.
actually go through that discovery. And any founder that's just like, I've never worked so hard and
Yeah.
not seen the return. And so I come in as a voice of reason and I lock arms and I not only tell them what needs to be done, but I implement and execute um, and fix everything on a project basis. And then sometimes I'll come in as a fractional half a day or a full day sales manager. So those are the types of frustrations that I see most prominently in the founder-led companies.
Oh. And what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to my LinkedIn. I'm under Susan Cashin.
Uh-huh.
You can go to my website, growthwiseconsultinginc.com. You could call or text me directly, 949-545-8570. There you go.
All right.
It's all
Well,
out there. You can find it all anyways online, right? With AI.
that's right. That's right. Well, Susie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm sure our audience learned a lot and gained a lot from your insights.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.